Hello, and here we are for the our discussion of marketing channels. Um, and what we will do, I have a special guest visitor here. Buddy, come here, buddy. This is Buddy. Remember you met Boots in an earlier discussion. This is Buddy, the other cat in the household, and Buddy has just been banging away at the chair that I'm sitting in. So, Buddy, say hi to the class. Hi, class. Great, Buddy. Good job. Yeah. So much for yes. Let's get back to where we were. All right. So what we're going to do in this discussion is we're going to define what is meant by a marketing channel. We're going to talk about kind of some of the changes that have occurred in marketing channels. We alluded to some of them in our discussion of marketing intermediaries. We will talk about two other topics. One is called distribution intensity, and the other we will talk about is vertical marketing systems. All right. So, as I mentioned in the previous discussion, there's tremendous overlap between marketing channels and marketing intermediaries because marketing intermediaries are part of marketing channels, and you just can't talk about marketing channels without talking about marketing intermediaries, and you can't talk about marketing intermediaries without talking about marketing channels. So some of the stuff that we talked about before in the intermediaries lecture will reiterate in this particular discussion. So a definition of a marketing channel is a set of interdependent organizations that make a product available for use or consumption by an individual or organization. So a set of interdependent, not necessarily independent. The organizations can be independent, but they need to be interdependent. They rely on each other. That's what interdependent means, right? A set of interdependent organizations that make a product available for use or consumption by an individual or an organization. And again, the discussion that we're going to have in this video is going to be focused primarily on marketing channels for consumer products, right? Because again, most of us have much greater familiarity with consumer products than we do with business-to-business products. But marketing channels exist both for consumer products and business-to-business products, as well as increasingly consumer to consumer, or what is called C2C products, right? So you can look in the book in chapter 16, and there's a couple of depictions, at least in my version, which is the 5th edition. I know some of you have the 6th edition of the book. The 5th edition, Exhibit 16.2, provides several depictions of what a channel might look like. And one of the things that appears, or one of the issues that is first addressed by marketers is do we want to have what is known as a direct channel, which is basically there are no intermediaries between the producer and the consumer, or do we want to have an indirect channel in which there's one or more intermediaries between the producer and the consumer? So at least in the version that I'm looking at in Exhibit 16.2, there's a direct channel that has a manufacturer and a customer, and then there's a direct channel that has one intermediary that has a manufacturer, and then there's a retailer, that would be the intermediary, and then the customer. And then a third channel that's depicted there has a manufacturer, a wholesaler, a retailer, and a customer. And I think I gave you an example in the previous discussion about when I worked at a bar, and it wasn't really necessarily a wholesaler, it was a liquor distributors, but that's the idea that you have, organizations that produce a product, and then you have other organizations that facilitate the distribution of that product to retailers, which is what a wholesaler or distributor is, and then you have retailers that are primarily designed to make the product available for individual customers to purchase or consume, and then you have the customer. So again, there's the thing the thing to keep in mind is as we mentioned with um, the intermediaries lecture, there's this idea of value, and so marketing channels need to add value to the purchase process, and that explains one of the reasons why we've seen such a dramatic reconstruction in channels, marketing channels in the past 20 to 25 years. A lot of that has been driven by changes in technology. And to give you another or a different example, if you read my biography, you might have noticed that that one time after I got my MBA, I worked for a trucking company. I was a middle manager for a trucking company in New Jersey. And one of our major clients was CBS, Columbia Records, Columbia Sony. And we used to send trucks down to a record facility, a music facility down in Pittsfield, New Jersey, or Pittman, New Jersey. And our drivers would pick up albums, cassettes, 8 tracks. I mean, this was the late 70s, early 80s. And if you think about things now, right, and you say, well, okay, so they would pick these things up, and so they would bring it back to our truck terminal, and then we would distribute the various records or 8 tracks or cassettes to music stores that existed up in basically between DC and Boston to the north, and then about as far west as Scranton, Pennsylvania, in the west. And kind of where I'm going with this is that if you think about it, I was like, well, who the hell goes to a record store, right, or a music store to buy records anymore, right, or music? And so something that was really, and you might talk to your parents or you might talk to your grandparents about this, right? There were these huge, right? And I remember these huge mega stores like Tower Records was this huge place where you just, all sorts of different genres of music and lots of albums within the different genres. And now, how do people purchase their music? Because now we no longer have the physical product in many cases. Right? We don't have albums. We don't have cassettes. We don't have 8 tracks. We don't have even CDs. Right? We're doing stuff streaming wise. Right? So those music stores, right? They don't exist anymore. Right? Just like Blockbuster. Right, Blockbuster, the video chain, right? So there's a lot of changes that go on in terms of intermediaries and channels, right? And again, one of the key things to keep in mind is the fact that marketing channels need to add value to the purchase process, and so some of the newer channels that have emerged, they add value in different ways. So if we think about like the Blockbuster situation, where Blockbusters were, I mean, it's like everywhere 25 years ago, right? And that company did something at that time, but if you think about like what happened to Blockbuster, well, pretty much what happened to Blockbuster was Netflix, and what did Netflix do that was different than Blockbuster? And basically was, well, hell, and you don't have to go to the store, right, to pick up this like VHS or whatever DVD of a movie. We can send that thing straight to your computer. Well, that's a whole different, right? And you say, so what's the value there? Convenience, right? Convenience, right? And maybe even selection, much more selection, because when you have a brick and mortar store, right, like Blockbusters were brick and mortar stores, there's only a certain amount of movies, right, cassettes and DVDs and things like that you can put, right, into, X number of square feet, okay? So, the value idea. All right, so we said we would talk about distribution intensity as well as vertical marketing systems. So distribution intensity, right, refers to the number of members that are used at a particular level in a channel. And you say, what the heck does that mean? The number of members to use at a particular level in a channel. And this primarily refers to retailers, right? So how many different retailers are we using in a particular distribution channel? And you say, well, I don't really know. And part of the reasons that distribution intensity is a key concept is, one thing is that distribution intensity has real logistical implications. And you say, well, guess what? We would never guess that a guy who's a logistics guy would bring in logistical stuff, and there really are a number of different logistical considerations associated with distribution intensity. But distribution intensity also has implications for product availability, pricing, and things of that nature. And so there's a lot of aspects to distribution intensity. And so let's look at the three types of distribution intensity that exist. There's what is known as intensive distribution, right? And this refers to products that are put in as many outlets as possible. Right? At the other end of the spectrum is what is known as exclusive distribution, and this is where a producer grants exclusive rights to a retailer to carry a particular product. And then kind of the in-between is what is known as selective distribution, where a product is in a select number of retail outlets in a particular market. So you say, well, you've just totally confused me. I have absolutely no idea what you are talking about. So let me try to give an example. Maybe that'll help things. So the products that you looked at for the longer written assignment. Remember, I said they were convenience products because they are purchased frequently, immediately, with a minimum of purchasing effort, right? They also tend to be intensively distributed because you put these products in a lot of different places, right? So there's a lot of different types of places that you can go to. You can go to, right? You can go to a CVS. You could go to a Walgreens. You could go to a Giant Eagle. You could go to a 7-Eleven, right? You could go to a convenient food mart. You could go to a sheet, right? There's a lot of different places. So the intensive distribution is the idea that the product is put in as many outlets as possible in a particular market. Exclusive, again, the other side of the coin is basically a retailer, or excuse me, a manufacturer gives a retailer exclusive rights to distribute a product. So if you see something that says exclusively at, right, that means that likely the only place you can get that product in a particular market is at that particular retailer. Now, there may be more than one location for that retailer in a particular market. So, for example, if something is exclusively at May Company, that would be okay. And in Northeast Ohio, there are, I don't know, 5 or 6 outlets for the May Company in Northeast Ohio. Something could be exclusively at Kohl's, right? And again, there are multiple Kohl's located throughout Northeast Ohio. And then, like I said, selective is where they're placed in a limited number of retailers in a particular market. So that might be where something that you might be able to find something, let's say, at a Dillard's, and you might be able to find it at a May Company, or excuse me, I'm saying May Company. What am I thinking of? Macy's. Hello. Yeah, let's go back 30 years, Paul. Yes. Ooh, let's go back to Kaufman's. Whoa! Let's go back to Kaufman's. Holy smokes. Yeah. No, nothing, no problem. So, you might be able to get something at a Macy's or Dillard's or JCPenney, right? But again, not everywhere. All right. So that's the distribution intensity And you say, well, what about the logistical challenges? Well, the logistical challenges are, from a common sense perspective, and one of the things that I hopefully will touch on in the logistics discussion is the importance of common sense to good logistics decision making and actually good managerial decision making in whole, right? Common sense tells you that the fewer locations that you have to go to, the simpler things tend to be, right? And I just think of some of the instances that I dealt with when I worked for the trucking company, and something as simple as dropping a letter, right, which doesn't sound like a lot, right? And so I remember I had a truck driver who was looking to deliver something in a place called Denton, Maryland, Denton. Denton's over on the eastern shore of Maryland. In actuality, the product should have been going to Odenton, Odenton, Maryland, which is on the other side of the Chesapeake Bay. It's on the western side of the Chesapeake Bay. This guy drove around Denton, Maryland. He drove around Denton, Maryland he drove for 4 hours, and he's like, I can't find where I'm supposed to go. And it was just simply that somebody had forgotten to put the letter O on in front of Denton and make it Odenton. And those kinds of things, right? They waste time, they cost money. Those kinds of things end up raising your prices, and you end up with mad customers, right? Because the customer in Odenton's waiting for his or her product, and it is not there, and they're wondering what the hell's going on. And it was a lot of fun. Yes. So, okay. So what we'll conclude with is a discussion of vertical marketing systems, or VMS. And again, your book, chapter 16, has depictions of vertical marketing systems. In my version, it's in exhibit 16.4. And I'll be honest with you, when I first learned my principles of marketing way back in the dark ages, thank you. I was always stumped by the vertical marketing systems concept, because every time I looked at the depiction of channels, the channels were laid out vertically, right? You had like, let me get my hands over here. There's my hands. You had hands. You had a manufacturer, and then you had a wholesaler, and you had a retailer, and then you had a customer, and it was always vertical, right? It wasn't horizontal like this. No, it was vertical. Right? So I was like, well, what is this big deal with vertical marketing systems? And it wasn't until I had to start teaching this stuff that the light bulb went on. I said, oh, I get the whole idea with vertical marketing systems. And part of it goes back to, right, the definition of what we mean by a marketing channel. Okay, so remember that a marketing channel is a set of interdependent organizations that make a product available for use or consumption by an individual organization. Okay, vertical marketing systems is defined as planned marketing systems to enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of the distribution process. Right, so planned marketing systems to enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of the distribution process. And you say, I have no clue what you're talking about. What this means is that in a vertical marketing system, that basically the intermediaries work together, right? They work together to improve service and lower distribution cost, and so that there's coordination and cooperation between the various parties in a distribution channel or in a marketing channel. So the big deal with vertical marketing systems is the idea that the companies that are in there, the manufacturers, the wholesalers, the retailers, or the manufacturers and the retailers, depending on how many levels you got in the channel, these parties are working together to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the distribution process. And efficiency and effectiveness is basically looking to improve customer service, right? And lower the distribution cost. You say, well, don't they always do that? Absolutely not, right? And here's an example of a company that is part of marketing channel, right, but isn't necessarily engaged in a vertical marketing system. I know at least one of you visited this particular retailer as part of your longer writing assignment, and that's Mark's. Right, Mark's, the deeper discounter that's Northeast Ohio based. And what Mark's does, right? Basically what Mark Glassman, the guy who owns Mark's, what he does is he basically violates every law of retailing that was ever written, and 9/10 of the laws of marketing, quite honestly. He goes and he finds like distress sales. Like he's waiting for Sears to go out of business because he's going to buy the inventory of Sears or some of the inventory of Sears and end up selling it in Mark's. And so what he's looking for, right? He's always looking for the ability to buy large volumes of product at relatively low costs that he can then turn around and sell at relatively low prices. But he's not really engaged in kind of working with other parties like wholesalers or manufacturers, right, to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of the distribution process. And believe me, I am not criticizing. It's just, not everybody gets into this whole vertical marketing system kind of thing because, for retailers and wholesalers and manufacturers to work together, there's a lot of stuff that goes there. There's a lot of stuff that goes on with that. Right? And I think back to a former student I had from John Carroll, who was a marketing and logistics double major in the early 1990s, and he worked with Manco, the old duct tape and bubble wrap company, and he got called in like a year and a half after he graduated from John Carroll. He got called in by Jack Cale, who was at that time was the CEO of Manco, and he said, so and so, I got great news for you. The good news is I'm putting you in charge of the Walmart account, and the bad news is you have to move to Bentonville, Arkansas, because that's where Walmart's headquarters was, because basically what the companies wanted to do is they wanted to have this close relationship, right? With Manco being the producer, Walmart being a retailer, and obviously a major retailer, and by having by Manco having a person in Bentonville that could go on a regular basis to Walmart corporate and interact with the people at Walmart, that could help with stuff. And if you ever get down to the Bentonville area, both Walmart and Sam's Clubs, which is part of Walmart, they have two separate campuses, and in front of their campuses, they have these huge parking areas that basically have all these reserved spaces for either Walmart or Sam's Club providers, because these companies are working together, right, to improve the effectiveness and the efficiency of the distribution process. And this provides an example, right, of the vertical marketing systems that are discussed in chapter 16 of your book. So there are three types of vertical marketing systems. Right? There's what is known as an administered vertical marketing system, where the coordination is achieved by the dominant party in the channel. And interestingly enough, Walmart is often seen as an excellent example of an administered vertical marketing system, so that the coordination is basically exhibited by the dominant party in the channel. Walmart is the world's largest retailer, and one of the reasons that Manco, the company I was talking about earlier, one of the reasons that they sent this former student down there was, Walmart was 35% of their business at the time, and so you got this big company, and the big company wants you to do things certain ways. You listen to what the company does or what the company wants. So again, the administered is the coordination exhibited by a dominant party in the channel. There's also what is known as contractual vertical marketing systems, and this is where the coordination is exhibited through a formal contract. And so a number of different examples of this, one of which would be kind of the franchising concept. Another would be contract manufacturing is an example of this concept. So again, there's a formal contract that basically forces or requires the coordination of the various parties in the channel. And then the third type is what is known as a corporate vertical marketing system, and this is where the coordination comes from ownership and control. And your book, uses Zara as an example, ZARA as an example. Zara owns some of their production facilities as well as some of the farms that supply the production facilities with the cotton that's needed to manufacture particular kinds of clothing. So I've given you an overview. I hope I got really passionate because when I start to get close to logistics, I start to like go a little bit crazy because I'm convinced that one of these days, those of us who are logisticians slash supply chain people, we're going to take over the world. So anyway, we will see you next time for the discussion of logistics, and bye for now.